The Tales of Saga is one of the most long-running and known fantasy franchises in the world, having released 18 mainline games plus various spin-offs from 1995, when the series was owned and published by the old Namco, up to today, a time where it now lives under the umbrella of Bandai Namco. If you're a jrpg fan, I'm sure you at least play one of these games in your life, but today we are not here to talk about modern Tales of games such as Tales of Arise or Tales of Berseria. No, today we are here because I am quite fond of going back in time to try games that many nowadays have never played, and to see whether they can actually withstand the proof of time and still be considered entertaining even in a different generation. This video was born from an idea of the moment while looking at my PC monitor during a rainy day, during which I just looked at myself and asked, why don't we play the first Tales of game and see how well it does it hold up? And so, today, join me on this trip in the past, back in the year 1998, when its PS1 version was released, to answer a question no one but me probably had in their minds. How did Tales of Phantasia, the first Tales of game ever released, age? And can it still be enjoyed even today? A bit of context here. I chose to play the PS1 version of this game, which, unlike the original version for SNES that was published in 1995, was released only in Japan in 1998. The only version to have exited the country of the rising sun is just the GBA one, which looks like this. And here, originally, I had written a joke about how awful the GBA version looked in comparison to the PlayStation 1 edition, but damn, now that I effectively look at it, it looks kind of slick for being a GBA game. Knowing the limitations of the Game Boy Advance, this looks actually good, not gonna lie. However, as I already said, the PS1 edition was only released in Japan, so how did I play the game? Of course, the internet has countless resources, and there exists various translations for the ROM. I used the Absolute Zero one, which keeps Japanese names for the charters and tries to be faithful to the Japanese text, so if you have played Tales of Phantasia before and you see some translation that leave you like, hey, I do not remember it being in a game, maybe it's because of this. Note that there are various differences between the GBA, the SNES and the PS1 versions, so because this is a reminiscence about the PS1 one, what I'm going to say is applicable mainly to that release. I don't know how the other editions are, so I cannot say anything about them. Having laid a bit of context here, I think that without further ado, we can start. Oh, also, this video is probably going to contain spoilers about the game, viewer's discretion is advised. The story of Tales of Phantasia is an epic tale of saving the world by the ends of time traveling. At the start we are introduced to the main villain, Daos, who escapes through time after having lost a fight with the legendary heroes, only to find other ones in the area arrives that seal him away through the use of two magic pendants, whose contemporary use can, however, break them free. We jump then further on in time and we get to know our protagonist, Kless, as warfighter son of two of the heroes that seal Daos away, and his best and useless friend, Chester, oh, and his sister, Amy. Hope nothing happens to her. Subsequently, the village they lived in is raided by people trying to revive Daos, all of this while Chester and Kless are out hunting in the woods. The village is destroyed, everyone there dies, but the pendant is not stolen as it was given to Kless by his father before departing for the hunt. Chester remains in the city to bury everyone and plan revenge, while Kless goes to some of his relatives in a nearby town to decide what to do. However, he is sold out by them, is robbed of the pendant, and ends up in prison, where he finds the first one of his companions, Mint, a Methodist, a fancy way to say healer that does not use conventional magic, who is the daughter of one of the other legendary heroes that seal Daos away. They escape from there, meet Chester again, and find the last of the legendary heroes, Morrison, together with who they try to avoid the reawakening of Daos. However, they fail and the Evil Lord is alive again, after, of course, having pulverized the poor guy that revived him thinking that he could control him. Daos then tries to kill the protagonist, but Morrison, through the use of time travel magic, sends them back 100 years in the past, saying to them that the only method to defeat Daos is restoring magic in the present, and in order to do that, they need to save the Yggdrasil, the sacred mana tree whose spirit, Martel, feels like the mana is being disturbed by something. And thus starts the epic odyssey of Kless and Mind, in order to find allies that can help them to save magic from disappearing and stop Daos from his malefic deeds. Now, the story is the classic epic tale that fantasy products tend to have. The group needs to save the world from the evil villain, end of the story. On this part, Tales of Phantasia does not really differentiate itself from other products on the market, but still, the story is enjoyable, if not for some things that make me just facepalm. Before doing that, however, I wanted to present an analogy of the story of this game, because Tales of Phantasia's plot seems to me like the legitimate child of Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger, with the funny thing being that Chrono Trigger actually got out in March 1995 and Tales of Phantasia in December 1995. Anyway, let me explain why I do think this comparison stands up. Well, for Chrono Trigger it is easy. You have time travel, and you use it to avoid the end of the world. Pretty basic as a comparison, but they literally have the same concept in the story. For Final Fantasy IV, the talk is a bit longer. You see, one of the main activities the story makes you do in Tales of Phantasia is getting spirits for Clarth, a summoner in your party, Just like in Final Fantasy IV, you try to get the crystals/save them from the enemy. The fact that summoning is also a big part of the game mimics another part of Final Fantasy IV, aka Rydia, and they also share some summoning/eidolons, probably because they use the same mythology in order to create them. Then, the story of Final Fantasy IV, especially at the end, goes places, and Tales of Phantasia also goes to random places at times without really making it so that the world building gives you an explanation about why they exist. If, of course, not for the sake of the plot, that is, right, Har? I'm sure that if I analyze both the games in a deeper way, I'm going to find other similitudes, but this is a video about Tales of Phantasia. The important thing is that I gave you the general idea about what I meant with that comparison. Returning to the game's plot, while generally the story is appreciable and has good written dialogues all along, it has various little and not so little problems I want to showcase. First, why is Norse mythology so preponderant in the game? Probably they didn't want to create a culture from zero and just model a story on the Norse one, but there is not a real explanation about why. Let me give you some examples. The sacred tree is the Yggdrasil, the tree of life in Norse mythology. You meet Odin and Valkyrie. Some plains are called the Valhalla Plains, a city is called Midgard. During the story, Valkyrie gives Glass Pegasus, which, by the way, comes from Greek mythology, so this is a random syncretism moment. Who talks like a human being and no one questions why a horse is speaking human language? Why is a horse speaking the human language, and why does nobody seem to care? The use of Norse mythology is many times intertwined with the plot, sometimes not, and I am still asking myself why did they decide to go down that route. Again, probably they didn't want to put the effort in creating a whole new mythology for the first game of an hypothetical series, but it is just so random sometimes that it makes me laugh. Secondly, there are some fetch quests that you have to do because the story obliges you that are just useless and serve more to make the game longer rather than to give you anything else. Together with this, some moments in the story feel left there just to make it longer and the retreat is not exactly stellar. For example, in the Moria Mines you find 2 pack rings that serve to form a pack with a summoning, that are broken. Because of this you go back to Albanista, the main city for the majority of the game, ask someone who can repair them, be said that a guy in a random place can do so, go there, discover that he is not there, go to his supposed new location, ask information, discover he's in an oasis, visit all 3 oases only to discover that he's back in town, get back to the town, and discover that, before talking to him, you have to collect 5 basilisk scales. This is not my definition of a meaningful part of the story, more like an asshole that I had to do because I am required to do so. An example of how things could have been done differently. You find the rings, they're still broken, you get to the same guy, however this time he's speaking for story reasons which can actually be explained with the existing story, by the way, with the man you need to find. You discover that it looks exactly like Memorizon and then you talk. Because yes, this whole journey was only to get to know the past descendant of the Memorizon you met in the present. Talk about complicating things for no reason whatsoever. Third, the whole time travel timeline thing is a mess and is never properly explained to the player. Apparently, if you modify the past, when you move to the future your deeds are still there, but the things that happen in the past do not change the future, because when you return to the present after having defeated the Daos in the past, the Daos of the present does not know what you are talking about and does not recognize class and mind. A thing that has no sense because they are ready for the party. If the past mattered and if events there change the future, then you should know who they are. However, then you go 50 years in the future, and there you see that Daos has awakened himself again, from where he seemingly was left dead, and the people of that era know what you did 150 years in the past, and your party members are considered legendary heroes. Look, all I can say is that it's a mess. The only explanation I came up with is that you are traveling through independent timelines that have their stories and share every charter, even though in the ending it is stated that in the present, when Arche, one of the party members, leaves for the past, there exists another Arch in their timeline, which totally debunks this and makes me ask if there are more Daos in the various timelines, otherwise, if this law didn't apply to him, it will make things even more confusing. My theory doesn't even make sense for a simple fact. When the party travels through time with the Eternal Sword or the Thor Machine, they just say the time and place they want to go, except when they use the Eternal Sword. In that case they say they want to return to their era, which maybe can imply the fact that they switch timelines, but I don't know. Honestly, I think I am deeply analyzing something that was flawed from the start and just added a real explanation apart from it serves the plot, so it exists. But maybe something got lost in translation, or there is effectively a dialogue that analyzes the situation more deeply, but from my knowledge after having finished the game, the time travel in this game is just a lot of unexplained stuff. Fourth, this whole game, apart from the first part where random guys want to awaken Daos, could have been easily solved by simply having Daos and the gang at a table with pizza and a beer, talking to each other and becoming friends. You want to know why? Because they have the same objective. Daos wants to save the Yggdrasil in order to save his world, Class and the others want to save their world, and in order to do that, they need to save the Yggdrasil because they need magic to defeat Daos. If they just sat down and talked, they would have discovered that they wanted the same thing and they probably could have struck an alliance, but no! The game decides that no one needs to question Daos' motives for doing his actions, except for a random moment by Archie that ends in class yelling at her to shut up and before the final battle. The fact is that this revelation is done exactly there, even though it is hinted way before, when you're right in the future, which makes me ask whether they just had a loose end they needed to wrap up or what. But in any case, it left me dissatisfied. I can understand what they wanted to do. They wanted to showcase how two people with the same objective can walk various paths in order to achieve it, with Taos being the violent path and Class and Company being the friendship one, though it wasn't surely harmless. But it still left me feeling like what I witnessed was not satisfying, and I am still feeling like that even now. Hey, look at the bright side of things. At least Taos has no enemies. In the end, the Tales of Phantasia story is a mishmash of various things that, incredibly, still ends up creating a good story because, yes, with all of its problems, the plot is still something that can be appreciated and enjoyed, though sometimes it requires a little bit of suspension of disbelief to actually be able to do that. By the way, let's remember that this still remains an anime product, so there are some staples of the genre, such as the normal Offspring moment that, however, this time is actually both done by a Chester and then by Archer. I like when products like this subvert my expectation in a positive way. Moving on, the game presents various side quests the player can complete and that are, in the pure spirit of old school jrpgs, extremely easy to miss if you do not talk to everyone every time you go to a new place, you do not remember previous parts of the story, or you just don't explore the entire world every now and then to see if something new happened. I'll be honest with you, I did not do that many side quests. I finished the Ivan and Nancy one, a quest where you follow two people that fall in love and face adversities in the name of it, the piano lessons one, where Mint has to teach to the daughter of the mayor of the city of Venezia. Yes, apparently we have also been transported in Italy over in Scandinavia, perché ovviamente Venezia è solo gondole e canali, adesso verrà fuori un NPC a dirci «Uè, italiani, pizza, mafia, mandolino, Berlusconi!» And arrive at half of the Suzu quest, which makes us visit a ninja village and be involved with some of her problems, as I stopped ever recruiting her. The few I played were actually enjoyable, and you can see that they care in writing them, or at least the majority of them. The piano one was actually random and didn't need to be present at all, so probably the other quests are of a decent level themselves, but I cannot testify for that. Now, Tales of Phantasia does nothing new with its characters. They are really archetypical, though there is to say that does not mean they are totally to write off as mediocre such. No, that would be a too strong accusation for Archie, while for the others... yeah, let's just leave it at that. Also, the characters are renameable in the game, but for the sake of canonicity, I'll use the default ones, also because they are the ones I actually used. Let's start with the main protagonist, Claes Alvheim, who is the classic hero of the old epic JRPG Tales of the 90s. He is the son of two legendary heroes, he is well versed in the martial arts and in the way of the sword, and he is, say it with me, the Chosen One! This is actually something that can be debated, as he decides to defeat the house out of necessity and revenge, but there is also to say that what started this whole thing was a pendant that he was supposed to inherit and defend for the future, so yeah, this is just another definition of the Chosen One, just with less tasties in the background. Claes is your average anime guy. Righteous, helps those in need, is embarrassed when he has to deal with his love interest, he doesn't think about why Daos does what he does simply because of his feelings of revenge and righteousness, and shouts at those that actually do. On the other hand, Mintanade is, guess what, the typical anime heroine. Gentle, kind of shy, is easily embarrassed, she's a pure maiden, as the Unicorn states, can be scary when she feels like it, can cook, and is a couple counselor and a piano teacher. If you are asking, those last two are actually canon. She is also a Methodist, so an healer in more human and comprehensible terms. However, much like Claes, she doesn't do much to get out of the stereotypical anime heroine image that holds up even today. If the main couple of the game is exactly what you would expect from an anime-related product, we have two people that hate themselves from the start, only to then, because we are constructing characters on clichés, end up having a child together. By the way, this last bit is apparently canonical, all in an obscure novel about Tales of Phantasia called Maken Ninpojo, whose only existence is testified by a Tumblr page, by a discussion on GameFAQs, and by a Twitter that does not exist anymore. Apparently, this novel has a protagonist, a grown-up Suzu, a character I'm going to talk about later on, joining their adventure by the son that the couple I was talking before, Falcon, and they apparently are shipped really hard in the book. However, I digress, we were talking about the classic hate-to-love couple, and of course, I'm talking about Chester Barclight and Archie Klein. Archie is basically a witch that can use magic. She's an airhead, an elf, which constitutes a big part of her character arc. She teases Claes all the time by trying to flirt with him in front of Mint. She tries to be seductive but fails thanks to her childish demeanor. She gets drunk easily and dreams about stuff. She's a best chef, and she is not a pure maiden. Oh, and she is also the best character of the game, but this is just a very personal opinion. Archie is easily the comedic relief of the party, and she works really well as that. For example, in the last level of the Moria Mines, before getting Maxwell, one of the spirits the game makes you go and recruit, the party tries to read a stele with some elfish writing on it. Archie knows it and thus reads the inscription. Everyone is surprised by that, and when she asks whether they thought she was a good for nothing, Kless and Clarf, with a straight face, reply yes, and she snaps. This is just an example of when she actually pulls a comedic skit off. However, in the end, a role in the story is exactly that. To be a comedic relief and to be the opposite of Mint, and these two things intertwine many times. When she teases Kless by trying to seduce him, it is always so that the writers can get a reaction off of Mint, but nothing more, as there is not any motive why Archie should actually feel love for him, if not for the fact that he helped her at the start of the game when she was used as a proxy by Spirit to vindicate herself. I'll be honest, I think that when she used as a comedic relief, she is actually quite funny, but that cannot be her whole personality, and unfortunately she ends up becoming just that, except for when she gets her own character arc about her mother. As for Chester, he loved his sister, I guess, and he is going after Daos to avenge her. He is Klaus' best friend, he beefs with Archie before having a child with her, and he uses a bow. He is also the most useless character in this entire game and has no reason to exist apart from being Archie's bachelor, because platonic relationships evidently were the evil back in the days, and to make it so that Kless has a friend before going back in the past. Seriously talking, Chester's presence in the game cannot be really justified at all. He appears in the first part when Kless is in the present, and in the last part when the gang goes in the future. So he is missing for the majority of the game, and even at the start his whole gig was just to be a more vengeful and not tempered Kless. However, apart from that, his role in the story is abysmal, and he feels out of place many times, especially because the majority of the few scenes where he actually does something are missable, as you are not obliged to see them, and even though he is Kless' best friend, there are not that many interactions between them during the game. This just shows how little Chester actually counts in the story and how useless he is. You can easily just finish the game without ever using him after its obligatory part, and without even hearing anything from him apart from his beef to lovers relationship with Archie. In all of this, we have other two party members to talk about, this time being Clarf Lester and Suzufuji Bayashi. Clarf is an adult summoner who dedicated its life to researching summonings and magic in order to make it so that even humans can use it, as only elves and half-elves have this capability. He is in love with his assistant, likes to drink alcohol, is the most serious person in the party, probably the most intelligent one, says to temper the more comedic moments or even to help them, and has one of the best reasons to not partake in a fight, and that is because he is in hangover. Yes, it really happens. He is a vital part of the story simply because the majority of it revolves around spirits that are needed for the plot and that you can actually sign a contract with and summon later on. Suzu, meanwhile, is a totally optional character that you can recruit by completing a side quest that, like all of the others, is not exactly intuitive to obtain, as it requires you to talk to random people, and if you are not used to do that in jrpgs, you are 100% going to miss it. She is a serious yet extremely young ninja that has a sweet tooth, and to be honest, she is not exactly expanded upon, as she is available for like the last 20% of the game, rendering her kind of useless in the grand scheme of things. After this vivid description of each of the party's member, it is quite evident that the characters are a mixed bag of quality. Too many cliches just make them forgettable and even uninteresting at times, though that does not apply to all characters, as for example, I have enjoyed Archie being used as a comedic relief simply because she actually works. The descriptions above also showed how 2 out of the 6 main characters were not that necessary to have, which makes me say that they either had a bigger part in the plot that got cut out during development, or that they were added later on, while the original story really didn't need them. This is everything for what concerns the main party. Now it is time to tackle the main villain of this game, Daos, the time traveler and the man that destroys any reasoning in this game's time travel theory. He does not appear that much in the story. The game prefers making you feel like he's an ominous presence that you can feel everywhere rather than showing him, but this also means that he has not that much screen time to obtain a characterization. He is someone that is willing to sacrifice lives and do everything he needs to be done in order to achieve his objectives. He shows a little bit too much affection for the Yggdrasil and, by proxy, for Martel, the spirit that inhabits it, and nothing else, really. I think it is kind of difficult to actually judge Daos. From one point of view, he has a reason to do what he has to do, and from the start, he states that the main characters are not his enemies, just those that are connected to Magitech, which is, as everyone used there in the world video, the alternative magic that even humans can use and that apparently just sucks out mana like a malfunctioning diesel. So it is a different twist on the fantasy villain, as the protagonists are the ones that actually want a fight rather than the opposite. However, from the other side, I think Daos fails at being a decently good villain just because his actions do not have a meaning until later on in the game, where you kind of understand that there is more to them rather than just wanting to destroy anything, and in general, the game portrays it as this sort of bloodthirsty machine that is going to eradicate everything that stays in its way without actually answering to why is it doing that. This was one of the main questions I had from when the game introduced Deus, and if I'm not wrong, before the final confrontation there are just 2 instances where the protagonist actually asks themselves why Deus is doing what he does, which shows that the game didn't really know how to handle the matter and just settled at the end with an explanation that just feels random. However, I had to underline that this vision of Deus is mainly personal, objectively works as a villain, but it is undeniable that his motivations feel like they weren't actually that much thought, especially because they are thrown out just at the end of all, which, for me, is not a good narrative choice, but I digress. As for Tales of Phantasia's gameplay, well, you're going to be able to freely run the portions of the world that you have unlocked up to the moment, which are, of course, populated with the classic random encounters, whose rate, however, is actually really fair and never becomes bothersome, if not in some specific areas. Having said that, let's focus on the battle system, the pillar of this game's gameplay. The ideas behind the classic Tales of battle style are already present here, just in a rather rough form. When we engage in an encounter, we are going to be able to move in a 2D environment and hit the enemies with some basic combos and with abilities, between which there are some that you can use only after having mastered other ones, something that can be achieved just by using them. These attacks can be executed by a combination of buttons that we are going to assign them, and they are limited to 4 slots, meaning that, during the game, you will find yourself changing skills depending on your situation. We can also make other characters do a specific action or use a specific item, and if we want to, we can even take control of them if we do not like playing as the offensive power of the party personified by class. It is possible to choose what basic attacks to do just by the pressure of the circle button, and of one between the directional arrows, otherwise we will be executing the default slash attack. You can, of course, combine these 2 attacks in order to create some combos, but these are generally limited to a chain of maximum 2 attacks. Every skill you use is going to consume a determinate amount of technical points, the MP of this game, which is just a classic. The battle system of this game is actually really simple to get the hang of, and as I have said in the beginning, it is actually quite amusing how much of modern Tales of gameplay can be found here. The freedom of movements, the arts, the basic gameplay mechanics, even the fact that you can play as any one of the characters in your party, which, by the way, I didn't think was even possible before checking online, as the game doesn't exactly tell you. All of these aspects can be found in the first game of the series, some of are overlooked than others, but they are still here. Some things that are not present in this game are the fact that from the start you play in semi-auto and can only switch to manual only by equipping a certain item and, well, the third dimension, but apart from this game just plays like you would expect a Tales of game to, and let me reiterate it, we are talking about a game that got released in 1995. Tales of Berseria, the game I can make the most comparison with, as it is really the only other Tales of title I ever finished and fully played, got out in 2016 and the basic core of the game is the same. That is impressive. Still, the gameplay of Tales of Phantasia also feels kind of heavy. This is actually more a gut feeling rather than anything, but I will try to explain what I mean by that. The game feels slow, as the attacks need a lot of time to actually get started, the movement feels a bit sluggish, and the whole semi-auto control is kind of a hit and miss sometimes. That is because sometimes you want to attack a specific enemy, but the game goes like, nope, you are instead going to target the farthest enemy from you, which results in you getting further away from the monster you wanted to hit, near another monster that you did not actually want to target, and it makes you lose time. Yeah, the targeting method of this game kind of sucks, and together with the autodash that the semi-manual imposes you, can be a bit of an headache. Also, some skills have their animational rollback to your original position, so if you start from point A and end up in point B, the animation is completed when you return to point A and not before. So there is not really a sort of frame cancelling that makes you immediately regain control and start attacking again. This is especially a problem for class. I don't know whether the other characters also have it, as I only use class during the whole game, but considering that they are all mage users or range attackers, I kind of doubt it. However, because this is a problem for some skills, as others instead just end after their execution and you can immediately act again, you will find yourself sometimes prompted an attack that is not going to happen, or vice versa, you are going to move before an animation ends and thus you are not going to be able to relocate until it finishes. However, I think this last one is a minor criticism because yes, it's present, yes, it's kind of annoying, but in the end, you kind of get used to it. Still, the most important question regarding the gameplay is it fun? And my answer is absolutely yes. Of course, this is a subjective opinion, but I never actually found myself really wanting to escape battles or finding the gameplay too much of a hassle. Yes, it kind of becomes boring on the long run, but that is a specific thing of jrpgs, as by lasting for a while, the gameplay tends to become stale, especially towards the end, but I had a fun time with it. However, the flying enemy dynamic is the worst. It is realistic, but it is also frustrating. Having to take down flying enemies to land normal attacks on them, only to see them immediately get back up in the air, is not exactly my definition of fun. It reminds me of the float ability in the Saga, and damn if I hate that skill with all of my heart. Talking about the difficulty of Tales of Phantasia, I think it is well balanced throughout the entire game. It is not too much easy nor too much difficult, it always succeeds in striking a good balance between the two so to feel entertaining and challenging without resulting in being too harsh nor too climate on the player. Talking about the boss battles, they are never really hard, but I will define many of them as annoying or frustrating, which is a perfect definition for the true last visit of the final boss. They are not hard, just annoying. Oh, by the way, the final boss is Goku. A little note on the exploration part, this game, like many other JRPGs, rewards the player for backtracking to previous cities and for remembering stuff that maybe you discovered before but had not the possibility to actually use when you did. For example, the first time you meet Clarf, if you investigate his laboratory/house, you can find 2 magic tomes. However, because you have no magic user in your party, you don't pick them up as they are not going to be useful to you. If later on you return there after having obtained Archie, you are able to pick this up because now you have a magician together with you. These little things are always a nice detail that can make the player feel rewarded for investigating around, or even simply for remembering previous dialogues between the characters. Also, sometimes the game makes you able to actually progress in future quests even before you have to do them. For example, when you arrive to Alvanista for the first time, you are able to even get to Midgard, where you can buy equipment that can make your life easier for the first half of the game, and you can even progress some of the dungeons you later have to do in order to get summonings for Clarf, which can be a good way to save time later on and off grinding for XP while doing something useful. Continuing on the exploration part, we have the dungeons, they are generally good, they normally use a gimmick throughout their entire structure or during parts of it, like the mirror mechanic in Daw's Castle, and sometimes even in others, such as when you have to use the sorcerer ring, the one that shoots fire that you had to use in Ifrit's dungeon, also for example in the Moria Mines, while sometimes they also subvert previous rules that the game established, effectively trolling the player in the process. For example, in the Moria Mines you have an entire floor where, in order to go on, you need to light some candelabras. However, when you change floor, you see another candelabra, and because of what happened in the previous one, you think you already know what to do and you lit it, only to then be shot by some arrows. Then you get near the candelabra and you discover that, in reality, it was just a lever. Good job game, you effectively troll the player by making him base his actions on the recent past. That's actually clever. But yeah, the dungeons of this game are, for the majority of the time, food, actually well thought. But sometimes there are some stupid minigames you have to complete that are unnecessary, like the pressure plates minigame in Daw's Palace, where you have to eat the plates together with Archie, but she does whatever she likes instead of going in a straight line. That one particularly annoyed me. As we are talking about gameplay and game mechanics, let's also talk about another vital part of a Tales of game. I'm obviously talking about the skits. These are also present in this game, however their presence kind of goes unnoticed if you do not remember about their existence. This unfortunately happens because there is not a visible prompt that notifies the player when a new one is available, so you either remember to press start every time you have the occasion to see if there are new skits available, or you are going to miss out on them completely. This is really something I am quite saddened about, as the skits are a good way to further characterize characters, and in general, a good moment to have some comedy moments, so to mark a brief period of pace for the player, one where the user can just enjoy the character's interactions and not think about anything else. They are also useful to remember what you actually had to do and where to go in a more natural way than a big text written inside the menu, as when you do not have any skit available, if you press start you are going to get a skit that tells you where you have to go and what objective are you pursuing. This also happened me when, sometimes, I just didn't touch the game for a week and returned having a little bit of fog in my mind about where I actually stopped the last time I played. Another mechanic that is present here from the start are titles, heraldic nicknames that are obtained by reaching determined achievements or doing certain tasks, such as completing side quests and others. Unlike in other Tales of games, here titles are just an accessory and nothing more. Thus, they do not give to the character any stat boost, nor do they serve any real purpose behind being a little side mechanic that makes a completionist run a tad bit longer. Yet another feature that appears in the Tales of saga from the beginning is the cooking mechanism. During your exploration of the world of Tales of Phantasia, you are going to encounter some chefs that are more than happy to share their recipes with you, and if you add the needed ingredients, you can just cook them and restore things like your HP, your TP, cook your status, and so on. The more one of your teammates cooks a recipe, the more you will master it and the better the effects are going to be. Moreover, some, like Clarf and Mint, are better at cooking rather than others, such as Archie, and this is canon. There is a title related to this. Now, this mechanic is a nice thing to have on the side, as it sometimes becomes incredibly useful, but for the majority of the game, it will remain just that, a side activity that has no real purpose, if not to be sometimes useful, which, hey, it is still way better than some other side mechanics of newer games that are not even useful, so I consider that one a win. Also, I don't know why, but in Thor there is a random bullet hell minigame that you can play that stars Archie and that you are now seeing on screen. 10 out of 10, I need more Archie in my life, please buy the Namco remake this game, I need it, please! As for the graphics, well, it is still a PS1 game, and that shows in the world map, where there are 3D buildings that probably will make the majority of you gouge your eyes off, as they are not that good looking. However, the majority of the game is in pixel art, and as I normally say, good pixel art ages like wine, and Tales of Phantasia 1 really aged well. The pixel art maps are really enjoyable, going from the cities to the dungeons to even the ports. The characters and monster sprites are just good, as well as the animations, and really, I have nothing else to say about them. You also saw them during the review, and I think we can agree on the fact that the pixel art of this game could be even published today and be enjoyed without any problem whatsoever. Also, if you change a weapon, it also changes its sprite in battle, which is a little detail I always love to see. The only thing I'm going to be picky about is the constant reskin of monsters, which, however, is another thing that all the new jrpgs tend to love doing, and the fact that there are many rooms that are just repeated in more dungeons, especially the bedrooms, or even just entire dungeon rooms, which, however, is a reuse of material that is aimed at keeping the costs down and not making more work than the one that is necessary, so to a certain degree it can be understood. The game also has some anime cutscenes that are okay. They are not that many and they just look like a normal anime from the 90s, there is nothing more to say about them. As for the sound department, the soundtrack of this game was nothing memorable. It was exactly what I expected from an epic fantasy JRPG, but nothing more. It really did just its job and nothing else. In fact, I don't think I'm actually going to remember any track from this game. As for the voice acting, it is actually not that present. It appears during some story moments and as some line dialogues when you use an ability or get hit by an attack. The various performances are okay, I really have no complaints about them, they are your standard anime voice acting level, but I have one thing I just wanted to say. I don't think that they did the right casting for Archie. I can understand why they did that, as the voice chosen sounds childish and arid, just like Archie. But I never really came to like it, even though there is a sense behind the voice casting. I needed 33 hours to finish this game, and I honestly think that is the amount of hours anyone is going to take to actually finish the game without grinding too much or finishing all the side quests. Otherwise, if you want to finish everything in a run, you are probably going to take up to 50/60 hours if not more to finish everything. As for replayability value, it depends if you want to complete the game 100% and left something unfinished during your run, or if you want to play another version of the game. In the first case, after finishing the game, your bestiary information and encyclopedia ones are going to be brought over to a new save file, while in the second, finishing the game unlocks the hardest mode, which can be a good challenge to bring down if you actually care about it. Other than that, there is nothing that the game offers other than replaying the same game you have just finished. Tales of Phantasia is a game that, all in all, really aged well under many aspects. If the story is nothing unmissable and has various problems, the gameplay is still fun, and it is interesting to see how many things the Tales of series already had at the start of it that are still present in a more refined form in today's games of the franchise. The characters, when not being nothing extraordinary, work well together and you will remember some of them even after finishing the game, both for some good reasons and for other bad ones. Of course, it suffers from many problems that afflict old school JRPGs, such as the difficulty to start and finish side quests, the random encounter rate, which is still fairer than other games but that skyrockets in some specific areas, and others, but I think that if you can sustain them, Tales of Phantasia is a good game that can still be enjoyed even today. That is, as long as you take your time finishing it. It is really easy to burn out from it, so if you are interested in playing it, I recommend you go slow and steady instead of going in as fast as possible. Still, is Tales of Phantasia an unmissable JRPG that you have to play? No, absolutely not. It does many things that other games already did, and you are going to get a Tales of experience in terms of gameplay, so in that case you can play a modern Tales of game and still get a better one. After all, this is the first one of the series, of course things are rougher. Personally, I enjoyed and at the same time did not appreciate my experience with Tales of Phantasia. While it is an enjoyable game, and it was absolutely surprising to see how many things were already present in the first game of the Tales of series that I thought were added later on, I had to say that many times there were dungeons that annoyed me, the story that really slow pacing, especially at the start, and I still think the best part of the game is the future, when you don't have to deal with summonings and all of that, which was probably the most boring part of the entire game, as it is nothing else than a big glorified fetch quest for some creatures you are not even going to use that much after the past and even towards the end of it. Having said that, I'm still happy to have played the first game of the Tales of series and to see how the series was at the beginning, and I think you kind of understood that for how many times I brought it up during this video, so I'll stop. Also, this game presented me Archer. 10 out of 10 just for this.
What the fuck did you say about my wife?
You motherfucker.